So can you explain a little bit about your organisation and what your role is?
I'm Steve Place, so I work for a local charity called Community Action Network, CAN. We're just celebrating 50 years of operating in Bournemouth. And we're the local infrastructure charity supporting and representing local voluntary community organisations across BCP. So our aim is that we want to see strong, healthy, diverse and vibrant communities. And we do that by providing free advice and support to people who want to start up a voluntary community organisation, good practice in running one, helping them to recruit and manage volunteers, helping them to access money and income and facilities that they need to operate in. We also help them work together in partnership with the statutory and the private sector. And we have a membership of about 500 organisations, and probably in 1 year we support about 215 individual organisations. And one of our members is...
I'm Erika. I'm the charity manager for Poole Waste Not Want Nots. It's a charity who helps people on low income who struggle and they suffer food poverty. And as we can imagine these days, it's getting busier and busier. So we support vulnerable adults who come to us. They're very anxious. They don't like to ask for help. At the moment, we've got 420 households on our books. And over October, we actually supported 38 new members. And on top of that, we've also got the people from Ukraine coming through the door. So it's a social supermarket offering food, fresh food as well as frozen foods. We're a step up from a food bank. So although the food bank would fit the crisis, we're about making that journey longer, money managing, supporting menu planning, food budgeting, and actually just advice, sitting and listening to people coming in. We've got a coffee shop opened in April, and that gives people a sense of coming in to talk, meet and make friends, just coming in for a coffee and a matter. And also keeping warm now, because as we know, people can't afford to put the heating on as well as eating. So that's kind of a brush up on what we are. Always not whatnot.
Yeah. So rewinding to COVID, obviously a really difficult time for a lot of businesses and organisations. What was your experience from a CAN point of view as how businesses or organisations that you were hoping to support were struggling at that time?
Yeah, let's start with CAN first of all. Luckily for us, most of our income comes from grants and contracts with BCP Council and with the local NHS, and that funding carried on throughout COVID. So financially, we were fine. But like most organisations, we had to fundamentally change the way we delivered our services. So all our staff ended up going to work at home. So all the gubbins that needed to be put in place for remote working. And obviously we could no longer have face-to-face meetings with the groups that we advise and support. So like everyone else had to learn to do virtual meetings at the wonders of Zoom and Teams and so on. I think also the biggest change for us was that obviously there was a huge need for volunteers to support people in crisis through COVID. So we worked very closely with BCP Council, was Together We Can programme, help them with recruiting and training their volunteers. And also we were one of the few places where actually the local NHS asked us to recruit and manage the volunteers for the vaccination hubs. And it started off at a Beacons, now at Kings Park Hospital, but also a number of pharmacies and GP clinics. But within a couple of weeks, we'd recruited and trained 3,000 volunteers, which just shows you the sort of what the community in BCP is like in terms of coming forward when there's a real need. But I think for most organisations, most of the voluntary community organisations at BCP, it was a really difficult time. Some of them, their income was really affected. Probably over a half of organisations said it had fallen to some extent, particularly those that were relying on, people paying some sort of contribution when they come for a service, weren't providing a service, back income wasn't coming in. or it could be where they're selling stuff, like all the charity shops had to close, so that income was no longer coming in. An awful lot of organisations rely on community fundraising, all those dinner and dances and discos and fun runs and so on, obviously couldn't happen at all. So some groups were really dire consequences. And when we were surveying the local groups, a small number were saying they were in imminent danger of closure. Maybe about 40% they would close probably within 12 months. Some people were laying off staff because even with the furlough scheme, they didn't have enough money in reserves to actually pay the 20% and other costs that they had to contribute towards the furlough scheme. But over half the groups we worked with were saying demand was rising, just like Poole Waste not Want, those sorts of services they needed more of to sort of cope with COVID.
So moving to the project now, from a council point of view, we're keen to see these grants help businesses and organisations not just survive but thrive. Steve, can you tell us a little bit about the project that we worked together on, and then Erika, a little bit more about how the funds helped you and Poole Waste Not Want Not in particular?
Okay, yes. Quite often groups in the voluntary community sector aren't seen as part of the business sector, and therefore don't often get the opportunity to take up business support stuff. And in particular, it's because a lot of their funding does come from grants and donations, so it's a different sort of business model than most businesses that obviously rely on sales. We had groups saying 80% of them wanted to carry on doing COVID-related work because they needed additional funding to do that, but also they needed some support and advice on how to write good applications and where to get funding from. So when the Bounce Back program got launched, there was one which was actually about providing advice and support to business groups, so not actually for yourselves, but actually to provide a service to frontline businesses. So we talked to the team about doing a project that actually would be focused on voluntary community sector and would be looking at actually income generation, and in particular grants and donations. So we wanted to put on a series of services, access to one-to-one advice and support, have put on expert training around various aspects of income generation, again, mostly around grants and donations, and actually, very importantly, put on what we call Meet the Funder events. So these were like 1-hour webinars where a grant funder would do a short presentation about the fund they have or funds they have available, the priorities, the processes, the do's and the don'ts, and then groups could ask questions backwards and forwards.
So Erika, tell us a little bit about how the project between CAN and BCP Council helped Poole Waste Not Want Not, and what you did with that grant money.
Well, firstly, it really, really did help our budget because obviously we were able to be supported by CAN for 3 training packages. So we have 32 volunteers at Poole Waste Not Want Not, which meant we were able to give them all the opportunity to do the level 1 and level 2 training courses for the food hygiene. Safeguarding was a big issue, so we were able to put them all through training on that. But for me, it was about Meet the Funder. Meet the Funder was really, really helpful for me because I came into this role 2 years ago. Due to COVID, I got made redundant from another charity, and I wasn't really familiar with Poole as a whole. So working with CAN and getting introduced to Catherine, she really introduced me to a lot of contacts, which gave me a lot of confidence, gave me successful applications. The webinars, we went into breakout rooms, and I gained a lot of contacts, which I'm proud to say today we are working with our lower learners in the shop, doing some training opportunities. And if I hadn't have been on those webinars, then I wouldn't have met the ladies that I'm working with now. So I have to thank them greatly for that support and the growth that we are working on. Our journey has just begun. Poole Waste Not Want Not has so much more to offer than just a social supermarket.
So Steve, tell us a little bit about the legacy of the COVID funding and what it's meant for CAN and today moving forward and some of the outcomes.
Yeah. Okay. So obviously we wanted to get more money into local groups. Erika's just talked about. So, we worked with 53 groups with our one-to-one basis, about 750 hours of support. And we helped them with about 70 grant applications totaling $750,000. And sometimes takes quite a long time to get results back from grant applications. But from about 40 of them, successful about 210,000. So for an investment of 50k from the council, we brought in, to £220,000 in grant income, and probably over the next few months we'll hear some more successes come back. So that's great because that helped some groups carry on what they were doing, but more importantly to help deliver new services, new ways of doing things. There's been an awful lot of learning from COVID about actually needs but ways of successfully delivering services. But I think the other big thing we wanted is what Erika's alluding to as well. It's about confidence and skills. So it wasn't just a bandage, getting some money in quick, but helping people feel more confident and skills to do income generation. And I think that came out from providing the expert training from NCBO, which of course is highly regarded, but for most local organisations were too expensive. So we're heavily subsidised from the grant from BCP Council, Meet the Funder events, and the one-to-one has helped improve competence and skills. So actually, in the years to come, we hope to see that groups will be far more successful in their income generation than they were before.
So moving to today, where we're hopefully beyond COVID now, but of course we're facing a whole new set of challenges with the cost of living environment. I think the aim or the intention was to try and use these funds to enable businesses to become more sustainable and stronger in the future. Do you think, looking at the challenges ahead, the work that you've been able to do with the grant funding has helped those businesses, charities, organisations to meet the new challenges ahead?
Oh, definitely. I think, but it's going to be the story doesn't stop today. As in any organisation, people move on, so the skills and the confidence could be lost from that organisation. Or there are new challenges, like we were talking. This is about COVID. Now we're talking about cost of living. So, what's going to be the next challenge in 6 months' time? So I think this project demonstrated that actually this sort of work is really sorely needed, has a great return on investment, at least 4-to-1, and we're looking for continuation funding for it so that actually we can continue that work, bring more money into the sector, more money into BCP camps, the BCP area. We've obviously been asking for it. We know it is a difficult economic times for local authorities, for the statutory sector. But our trustees have taken a leap of faith and they decided to allocate out of their reserves a part-time post for 2 years to carry on doing this work until hopefully we can find some additional funding. And that person's just started recently. And we're aiming to bring in maybe 200,000 a year, like working with local groups and on the ground.
Fantastic. And Erika, you talked about the support enabling Poole Waste Not Whatnot to become a little bit more resilient. Obviously, crucially, to look at more training and become better connected. Do you think that has helped you to weather the new challenges ahead? Where do you think you would be if you hadn't have had that support looking forward to the cost of living situation?
Oh, I think we would have been in a much worse place than we are now. CAN is fundamental to us in the support that they give us. I think without the context and the local connections, we all bounce off of each other. If I don't have the answer, I know I can go to somebody at CAN or BCP, and there's always the answer there. We can signpost within our network groups, which really has made us a stronger unit as one.
And looking again to the future, Steve, what would your message be to other businesses, charities, organisations out there that are worried about the future? How have you found this process, and what would you encourage them to do with either working with CAN or BCP?
I think voluntary community organisations, they are like most of small businesses, most of them are under 100,000 a year, so it is smaller than the primary sector. But I think all of them usually feel quite isolated, that they're alone, that there's nobody out there to help them. But there are various agencies and services around, and it's about reaching out and making time to make that approach, to pick up the advice and support that's available from us, from the Chamber, from BCP Council, from the Growth Hub, the LEP and so on. There are a variety of agencies out there that can support, frontline businesses and voluntary and community groups, and take the time down to ask the question, and I'm sure one of them will have the answer that you're looking for.
So, Erika, what would your message be to those people that might wish to turn to Poole, Waste Not, Want Not for advice in these new times that we're facing?
Well, I think for me, it's about if you're coming into Poole, Waste Not, Want Not, we are there to support you the best we can. But if we can't, we have always got somebody that we can signpost you to. You will always get the support. So please come through the door and ask that question.